second question is from Barry. Does any member have a process to remove extremely dark entities from homes?
Barry, is this with particular reference to an issue that you were dealing with?
Last few days I was asked to have a look at a house in a place called Mackay where I sometimes live, and this guy, his wife was having emotional problems. She's very moody, and he said that when they go holidaying in their caravan, as soon as she gets away from the house, she's really good. So I thought I did a remote there, and I was getting that there was about 4 entities in the place, and but 2 particularly really bad ones, and which had come in with one of. Well, I found out later. I worked out that it was one of her sons was into all sorts of probably drugs. Seemed to be one of the catalysts. So I went in and I'd marked which bedrooms they were. I went in and there was 2, if you say 2 entities that had been there for a long time, which weren't a problem. But the other 2 one was in the office, one was in the bedroom. So I went in and went to them, and they were well, I don't know how you rate them, but they weren't, I would use the term demonic, but they were pretty heavy duty, and I think they attached to the woman, and especially if she's a bit down in her moods, and so definitely affecting this couple's relationship. So the lady didn't know I was doing this, but I'm going. It's only a couple of days ago, so I'm waiting to hear the results, whether it makes a change. But so I guess the question is how any of the houses handle that. The way I do it, I just, in those cases, I just go to attract my pendulum. It swings really wildly, and then I just work with my thoughts and ask them to leave and do a prayer, different techniques, and then as the pendulum gradually slows down and goes to a dead stop, and then I ask whether it's been cleared. So this appears to have happened. I'll probably go back and check again sometime, but I'm just wondering what other people, or how other people handle a situation like that.
Yeah, interesting stuff. I myself would look at it from 2 points of view. Look at it from the lady's vibration and the vibration of the home itself, and you know, with the entity things, for me, I think it's really important not to get too caught up in the idea of how, you know, how bad an entity is. You know, it's look at it through, or I've looked at it through vibration. So it's either low vibration, or it's a normal vibration, or a high vibration. So when we use the biometer, we're not going into that place in our mind, because the minute we go into that place in our mind, you know, if it's an extra heavy or demonic entity, we start to put pressure. We're giving energy to the entity, and so we want to keep it just light. That's my take on it. So just looking at the vibration of the house, the vibration of the lady, and altering both would be how I would deal with that situation.
Mary's got a hand up, George.
Hi, Mary.
There we are. Rosemary's probably not going to want to admit to having had a lot of experience in this, but both of us have. There's a lot to be said for what you've just said, George, about not getting too into it. But I think you have to have some clarity about these things. They've come from somewhere. So have a look at where they've come in and how they've come in, because that might be an open door to other things coming in. So you're not just dealing with what's there then. You want to look how it got there. And it can get there because people are ill or they're mentally disturbed, or they can get in because there's some kind of weakness, because there's ley lines, or there's been new development, or they can come in through curses. Curses are much more common than people realise. And they can be intergenerational. And people can have them put on remotely as well. So you can get curses going back hundreds of years, and they'll affect only the men, or only the women, or only the eldest child in the family, or things like that. And it'll be a repeated pattern. So look how it came in, try and work out what it is, and then try and work out where it's got to go, because things don't just disappear. You know, it's a bit like throwing your rubbish out through the kitchen window and thinking it's okay. You've got it out the house, but it's not okay. So you need to think, what kind of an entity is this, and where does it need to go next? Because if it's mischievous or negative, it needs to go to be re-educated. If it's downright demonic and really bad, I always go to the top man, and I always say, in the name of Jesus Christ, be bound, be gone. And then I let the top man deal with it. Or I use some of the higher powered angels from time to time, because they've got to go somewhere. You know, if you get them out of one place, they'll, as it says in the Bible, they go around like a raging lion, seeing whom they may devour. So, you know, just clearing them from where you are doesn't work. Anything you'd like to add, Rosemary? You're the master at all this.
I don't know about that, but we find it best to work in a group.
Yes.
Really, because two or ideally three, but two and the person involved, there's real power in a group of three. Absolutely. And also no one can see the back of their own head, you know, so we cover different angles.
Yeah.
So between us, we naturally get a huge amount done. And Paul Marrow's called in the other day to look at someone. We were kind of rubbing our, you know, kind of what's going on here. And we call her Mrs. Velcro now, because if Mary's around, you can guarantee that whatever it is will jump from wherever they are onto her.
I'm
means
sort
that
of
these ones that
have
the intermittent kind of then are stuck for a little while, and we can actually get a handle on them. But yeah, it's a question of just talking with them, really, or trying to getting them open to talk with them, because most of them are not really dark. They're in the wrong place. They've got stuck. A lot of them are just frightened. They're drawn to other people who have a similar sort of emotion. If they have an emotion, if something happened to them in their life and they were, you know, upset or angry or fearful or whatever, they will be drawn to that. Others do come along ley lines and come out, and we're finding increasing a lot of people from off-planet, ETs kind of being drawn out in. I was going to ask a question actually at one point and see if anyone was interested in looking at electromagnetic vibrations and what are those that are coming in now, because we're suddenly exposed to so many new ones, but we'll keep that for anon. But yeah, there's no rule of thumb. Basically, we just try and help them, talk with them, and ask the angels. I mean, Christopher was a great one for having angels in, and we learned that, well, I learned that from him really, to call the angels in. And there have been a couple of angels when we've had to ask the angels to actually take them and bind them and take them to wherever clinic or whatever that they need to go for re-education and you know, whatever, but not here, thank you very much, you know. But many of them just go through to the light after they've talked a bit and calmed down and understand what's happened. I mean, you tell them what the year is now, and a flock of them are quite kind of shocked because they haven't realised. They're kind of in limbo, and they just kind of recircle their life going round and round, as it were, trapped, and it's not actually, it can't be very nice for them.
One thing
so we talk with them basically.
Yeah.
find out about them, find out what we can do to help.
What I would add is you must be absolutely fearless when you deal with this sort of thing. Again, I refer to the Bible a lot. You'd never guess I'd got a diploma in divinity, would you? Perfect love casts out fear. Yeah. So if you go in and you have love, it makes you invulnerable. It always makes you invulnerable if you have love. But if you're at all tentative or unsure, please don't get there, because you have to get in with this stuff like Muhammad Ali getting over the ropes. If you haven't got that sort of I'm the boss of this confidence, you can be spiritually overpowered by these things, and it's not a good place to be. That's all I'd say is, and if you're not sure, deal with them with one or two more experienced people. You might get one negative entity that's manifesting, but as soon as you start opening the space, you'll get a whole load of stuff in there. It might be damaging to your mental health. Let's put it that way. If you get the wind up. Just agree with that, Rosemary?
Yeah, and there are occasions when I've had to go to people I know to say, look, can you help me with this, because I don't know that I can do it, certainly not on my own, you know.
Yeah, always ask, always do the permission.
So always check.
Wow.
And you could always douse, you know, yourself first, say, you know, have I got the capability to do this on my own? Is it better for me to call somebody else in, you know, and find out?
Absolutely.
We're all on a learning journey, so hey, great.
Yeah, I mean,
and also
if you
working
need a doctor, you go to a specialist, don't you? So you wouldn't just go to your GP if you need a kidney transplant, definitely. So if before you start to work with these things, just do the permissions and say, can I, may or should, or is it right for me to deal with this? And if it isn't right, ask if it's right for you with other people. And if it's still not, then just don't go there. Because
there are basic rules, but often things are very individual, Barry. So, you know, you kind of have to see what's best for that situation at the time.
Yeah.
And you know, you gradually build up a list of questions, because really a good dowse is only good as the questions they ask.
David's got
We're always coming up with new questions.
Yes, I'll mute myself. There we go.
I would ditto.
Hello.
That's helpful.
Hi. Who wants to talk next? Sorry, I'll go after you, David.
Oh, go on. You go first. It's always ladies first.
Oh, well, thank you. I was going to say ditto all of that. I totally get what you're saying. I have had some trouble, though, in the past with conscious beings sending negativity. So I do always douse to find out what the vitality level is, just to get a kind of handle on what your source is, which does help. And when stuff is bad, you've got to kind of apply maybe a 3 or 4 prong approach to the whole thing. It can be, because it can be awful. And even if you've got the best protection on in the world, if you're sticking your head in a hornet's nest when you're dowsing, you might catch the odd sting. And I always work with the archangels Michael and Azrael, and they work together to take energies over that need to go over. But most definitely, even if you've got the most effective protection on, you only need just to not break that connection when you're dowsing, to pick up something when you're leaving. And if you do catch anything and you're on your own, do a Wim Hof, you know, do a cold shower. The shock of it will pull your aura in, and whatever is in your energy will come away. So you could get your clients to do that if they have that. And if your client would ever do that, Barry, get her to have a cold shower. That might help, because it does shock the system, and the aura comes right in when you do it, and then that leaves no energy for an attachment to fetch any kind of way in. And another good way is salt bath, because they're crystals. So if you have a bath in crystals, then you're going to clear that out of your energy system. But taking over dark stuff's hard. It takes a toll. You've got to kind of like have your safety net around you, and And we all douse to see if we should and shouldn't do things, but you could easily just step into it, even if you've said you can do it, because the universe knows somewhere along the line in your toolkit and the people that you know, you can do something to unpack what you've picked up, even if you didn't want to pick it up in the first place. So Azrael and Michael, and those angels, they work together, and they will take some heavy stuff off, but some of it just you need to call in help, definitely. That's my perspective.
I knew women would have the answer to this for some reason.
So my take on it is, from observation of these things, it seems to me that it's the people themselves that have gone into a dark space, which become the darkness. And once they do, they're more likely to attract that type of energy being or entity, or they attract other things in the same frequency. So if you don't put the person back to an appropriate frequency first, it doesn't really matter what you do with what they've drawn. They're just going to draw in more. So getting the person back to a higher frequency, anything just leaves anyway that shouldn't be there. But where they come from, when I was doing the house energy work with my son, we used to find these sort of triangle within a triangle within a triangle. So we're looking at plans, and that's how we drew them in. But when I went to look at them, they were like a pyramid portal, and they're generated by a clashing of different energy lines. So I can find those sometimes out in the countryside, where you've got energy lines all crossing over and colliding and creating these anomalies. But wherever we found one of those in someone's house, it was almost always had some sort of spirits kind of getting into the house and disrupting things. So you've got the people themselves that can cause it. Sometimes you have portals in the house that these things can drop in. But you can do a prayer of intents to clear those. I don't know if anybody follows Joey Korn's work. He has a prayer of intent that he uses to get rid of anything like that. But the other thing is, a lot of people confuse infrasound with dark entities. So I've seen people dowsing and saying, oh, there's a dark spirit here, there's a dark spirit. But what in actual fact it is just an earth energy coming up. And because it's a dark energy, or it might not be coming up, it might be kind of sucking energy out, which is the darkest one, the black, because there's no energy there. And people think it's some sort of spirit, but it's not. It is just another form of disturbance from your earth energy grid. Yeah, that's my take on it.
Thanks, David. I've got a real life situation I've been working with over the last couple of weeks regarding a horse up in Scotland and their owner. And she contacted me 2 weeks ago regarding the horse was in a bad condition. Had been losing weight and was not very vital, and appeared depressed almost, etc., etc. When I looked into the situation regarding the horse, I always look at the land that the horse is on. The land was okay for vibration. However, the horse's vibration was low. And when I started to douse into that, the issue was an entity. Now, the entity, as far as I'm aware, the entity will, as David said, it matches the frequency. And what it does is, in energetic terms, it latches onto the outside of the auric field. Now, the auric field needs to keep expanding, but with the heavier energy of the entity attached to the auric field, it can no longer expand. And if it's not expanding, it will start contracting. So from the point of view of an entity in an auric field taken up by a horse, it has the effect of, as I say, contracting the energy and working against the natural flow of energy for the horse. And the relationship between the energy of the horse and the horse's vitality becomes compromised. Now, when I did a short investigation into that it was clear to me that the entity had actually come from the owner herself. And it was a simple matter of dissolving the entity and allowing, or in so doing, allowing the expansion of the horse's energy field to go back to its natural ability, if you like. Now, as it happens, I received a text from the lady today, 2 weeks after I started working with the horse, and the text starts with, "He seems so much brighter within himself, alert and much fuller of energy." So that in itself is very important. What the owner's seeing, the horse is displaying a new vitality, and the simple response to that situation was to dissolve the entity from the auric field and to raise the vibration of the owner to the normal range. And within that, the entity can't reside within that new frequency. It's impossible, because the entity itself was of a lower frequency, so there's no longer a match. So my take on it is always that the more we go into these things with our mind, the more problems we start to initiate. It's really important to keep our minds out of it and have a simple way of just discerning. And the best way that I've come across within the dowsing process is just to ask the question about the vibration. When you start going into the idea of where it's from and the aspect of the heaviness of it and all this sort of stuff, we're starting, it's like protection, we're starting to evoke something to be fearful about. There's no need to go into those places.
Thanks for your advice.
No need. Keep out of it. Keep your mind out of it and deal with it at a vibrational level. It's all that's required. There's nothing else required. We don't need to keep our noses out of it. There's no need for it.
Thanks, George, for that.
Change the vibration, the vibrational aspects, and the work's done.
Change the way you look at something, and what you look at will change.
Yes,
something like that.
Yeah, just understand it, Barry. Understand the issue through the frequency and the vibration that it exhibits, and then use your pendulum to change the vibration.
Yeah, thanks very much for that.
You don't need to do anything else, but we can get disturbed. We can get problematic when we start looking into these things. There's absolutely no need to. When I first started dowsing, at the time, about 8 years ago, I was a taxi driver at the time up in St Andrews. And honestly, every single day I had to go home and clear entity from my auric field. It was absolutely mind-numbing. And until I realized that actually what it was about was it was an opportunity for me to raise my vibration. When I understood that, there was no match. So it's all to do with the vibrational aspect of it. I was exhibiting the vibration. I was absorbing the energy from the people in the taxi. But when I realized what I was doing and my role in that, it was an opportunity for me to move further in my own sort of understanding.
The only thing I would say to that,
Yes.
You've muted yourself.
While we're waiting, George, can I just ask a question? When you clear something from someone's house, do you go back, or from someone, do you go back and check that it's gone?
No, I don't. I only ever check. Is it Sarah? Sarah?
Yeah, there.
Sarah. No, I don't go and check, because the very notion of checking something, you're evoking it again.
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing I ever do is check the level of vibration.
Okay.
So
What if your client comes back to you and says, it didn't work?
I'll clear it, and then I'll check in on the vibration. But I'm not actually giving any energy to the idea of entity, because the minute we start to re-invoke that, we're creating it on some level.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to ask as well, what happens?
But the client will do that, though,
energy?
won't they?
What happens to that energy? You know, is it still there, going to attach to somebody else at some stage, or is it actually dealt with finally?
Well,
you may have cleared it from yourself from the area, but is it still enabled to join to something else, or is it actually diffused? That was, I wondered.
Just in the little system that I use, I don't know who spoke there, I couldn't see anybody speaking, but in the little system I use a little bit of visualization, and I dissolve the entity into the ground. So the ground, you dissipate the entity into the ground.
I don't get that's fully dealt with, but I don't know what other people think.
I worked on the site of a leprosy hospital once, and it was quite tricky. I didn't want to have to go back and keep checking. I'd like to think that my work works first time round. I'm an expert healer, and I have a lot of faith in the people that are supporting me, but there was a lot on site. So you kind of like, you caught one and then another one will come up. It was quite a complicated site, which is why I asked about whether you go back and check. No. But you know what? One approach could fix the whole thing. You know, you can swoop it all up. It just depends on what you've got, really, I guess.
Yeah.
Who was trying to talk? Someone was going to say something, weren't they? And they were muted.
Rosemary talked.
I did say something. I did say I was wondering what happened to the energy after you'd sent it out or dispelled it, because did that actually finally clear it, or was it still around, you know, to cause a bit of havoc elsewhere? The other thing I'll say is that I love the idea that Christopher used about the healing stream. We tend to use that at the end when, you know, to finally cleanse things, have the healing stream through. And often flower essences we used as well to just make sure there's nothing left, no baggage, no cleanse, you know, everything's fully cleansed, dealt with 100%.
Well, if you could do that, why not just blanket the earth and kind of cover it that way? But I think you'll find these things are always going to be there, and they're always going to come in from somewhere. A lot of them probably generated by us
That's why
ourselves,
it's an individual approach. You can't deal with everything all at once. They're all different.
which is
Yeah.
why I say it ought to be up to the responsibility of the person to make sure their frequency is high enough so that they're not affected by them. Us clearing them away just clears away the ones in the immediate vicinity, and then more will pop in. And if that person, it then doesn't have a sufficient vibrational energy to keep them off, they're just going to attach again.
Yeah, then that's a question of personal responsibility for the individuals, which I agree is very important. We can try and help them, but ultimately everyone's responsible for themselves, and everyone's on their own individual journey. And we can raise other people's vibration, but it's up to them to keep themselves clean and clear after. Help them to move on, really, to grow.
You can temporarily change people's vibrations, but if they go back into their old cycle, their old habits, their old thoughts, processes, they'll just go down again.
Yeah, agree.
But one thing with elementals, George say they're a darker energy, they're a lower energy, so they're kind of browns and reds and oranges. And I attack them if I see them in the nicest possible way by making them electric blue, which is, yeah, it's raising their vibration, and they just run. I've seen them disappearing down little holes inside of trees and but yeah, I watch them as it's happening. They just stay away from me. I've been attacked once or twice, but then I figured out how to do that, and never since. All I ever really see now is the tail end of them as they keep out of the way. So that's up to us to make sure our energy is high enough so that we're not affected by them.
Yeah.
Thing is, though, we know stuff. Now, a lot of people don't. So if you're a healer, you have to kind of just keep doing the work. And if you've got a client who's taken stuff like ecstasy, it kind of wrecks the aura, and they've got no kind of protection, or they've got very weakened auric systems, or some medical treatments do the same. If something's affected your physicality, it can affect your auric system and its integrity. So there will always be people that need help, and it's not always their fault, to my mind.
Might not be their fault, but it's their responsibility to get it right.
Yeah.
And how far do you take it? I don't class myself as a healer. I just put myself under the bracket of teacher. Because I can go around and change anybody's energy to a higher frequency, unless they're higher than mine already. And I have done just sometimes so that they can actually feel the difference. And then after that, I say, yeah, you can feel like that, or you can go back to how you want, up to you. So I'm not going to run around after you.
I think
that's your choice.
I think within when you're working with vibrational aspects, as you say, David, you can change the vibration quite easily, and the person will feel the difference, and there is a potential to go back into old patterns. So it's then important that perhaps there's a support aspect for the individual, and that they begin to recognize, because they'll only do that through experience, begin to recognize the things that bring their energy back down, vibrationally speaking. And that could be something as it could be an environment that they're putting themselves into. Yeah. It could be a television program they're watching.
The news.
It could be a relationship they're in. It could be anything. So So giving people a little bit of support and guidance with that, and letting them feel the difference between the vibrational aspects becomes, well, it becomes an awareness thing for the individual. And then they have the choice. They've got, when they know how their energy is responding to certain things, then they can discern from that. They can make the choice, well, do I watch that, or do I remove myself from that? So it's just through, I suppose, through an awareness, but we can certainly play a role in supporting that and feeding back information to them, which is very helpful to them, I think.
Absolutely, which is why I teach energy viewing, because then they can see the mess they're making of themselves. But
yeah, that's an important aspect. Yeah. But I mean, there's so much that can alter. I mean, we're all very sensitive to things. We all have a high sense. Well, some of us have more sensitivity, but we're all potentially sensitive to, a great deal of things, be it earth energies, be it environmental energies. There's foods, there's people. And so finding what's affecting your own vibration can be quite a challenge, and and we're all unique, so it's not a one fits all. It's a one fits all sort of jacket, if you like. So it can be an interesting journey supporting somebody finding out about aspects. And one of the biggest things with the for people vibrationally is the bed that they sleep in. Check the bed remotely. Check the bed, the vibration of the bed. People spend 8 or 9 hours a night in their bed. Now, if that bed is of a vibration which is out with the frequency, then people calibrate to that frequency. So if we're altering the vibration of an individual, yet they're putting themselves back into a vibration for 8 hours a night of a bed which is in the low vibration, then they'll naturally calibrate back to that level. So having an understanding of their environment becomes a vital approach. And with horses, it's exactly the same. I had a circumstance with a couple of years ago with a horse, and there was a lady up in Fife. She had a stable. She had 16 stables, and she took me around the stables, and she was telling me one or two issues. And there was one stable she came to, and there's a horse in the stable, and she says, "Oh, this horse isn't very well at the moment." And she said, funny enough, the horse that was in it before it became unwell. And that to me was a red light, a major light, that she had the awareness, but she didn't understand the relationship. And when I dowsed into the aspect that the stable itself was low in vibration. And when I looked into that through dowsing, actually on site, what it was in that particular stable, a very simple thing, was a drain. There was a drain running out of the stable, and that was having the effect on the vibrational aspect for the horse. Now the horse was being stabled in there 7-8 hours a day, so it was calibrating back to the level of vibration which was in the environment created by the drain.
Was there a sound coming up out of the drain?
I didn't hear a sound, David.
Or be it below our hearing range?
I wasn't aware of a sound.
Okay.
But
I can relate to that. Sorry to interrupt. I've heard very low frequency sounds coming up drain pipes, and I think they can have an effect on horses. Are particularly sensitive to vibrations because they're prey animals, and one of the ways that they sense prey is through a sense of a vibration through their feet as well as through their hearing, and I think they can hear a much wider range of sound than we can. So it could be that low frequency sound is really upsetting to them. Just
that's a good point, Mary. And another particular situation I've been working with just recently in in Whitehaven in Cumbria is another stables, and the stables are, there's 8 stables, and there's a drain centered right in the middle of the courtyard, and the herd leader of those particular horses, the main horse, the herd, the chief, if you like, became unwell, and my investigation again took me to the drain that was in the center of the courtyard. And so I've been checking in on the vibration of the courtyard and the drain over the last number of weeks, and as the courtyard, the vibration remains normal, the horse's response it's recovered from the issues it was dealing with. So the horses are what you say is 100% correct. The horses are really sensitive to their environment and to any change and any disturbance of the frequency and vibration within that environment.
So were you looking at a disturbance in the hertz range between 1 and 20?
It was using the biometer, David.
Oh, right. So
but on visiting the site, I worked with the horse on a one-to-one basis, as I've learnt to do. But I then turned my attention to the environment, and I very much in my hands felt the pressure around the drain. And that led me to looking at the aspect of the drain and what was going on vibrationally with the drain. And in resolving that frequency around the drain, the horse appears to have got better.
Yep. Affects people like that as well, not just horses.
No, exactly. No, I'm 100%. Horses, as Mary said, horses are really sensitive to these things, though. And, you know, the instinct, the instinctive animals, intuitive animals. And, you know, people think they're complicated. They're not complicated. They're just sensitive to things going on in their environment, and they respond to that. So if we can understand their environment and what's going on there for them, then we're in a really good position to help them. One of the other big things I've been working with recently with horses are to do with rubber mats people put down in the stable yard of horses. A lot of people put rubber mats down, maybe at a gateway during the winter time when there's when the horses come in muddy, and they're doing it to prevent the hooves holding the mud, if you like. But I've worked with three issues recently to do with horses illness, and it's to do with a mixture, or I call it a toxic mixture of rubber mats, underground water, and overhead cable line.
If you've got rubber mats, they're not earthing properly, are they?
No, exactly.
So if there's other influences, they're not going to be able to earth any of that away. So it's going to be a double whammy for them.
Yeah, that's one of the big. It's one of the big things with that and the rubber mat.
Yeah, some horses are stable all the time in winter on rubber mats in stables, and they get very unsettled because they can't earth themselves.
Yeah.
Really not very kind at all. People do it because it saves bedding, you see.
Yeah.
You don't need as much bed, but I think it's horrible. I think that horses in general are kept in stables far too much because people like the horses to look nice and they like to keep them clipped. And of course, when you clip them, you've got to either rub them up or keep them inside more, or both. And I think more natural keeping of horses is beneficial to them, like it is for, you know, not healthy for any mammal to be kept cooped up indoors all the time.
Yeah, no, I
When
concur
I
with,
had,
I concur, sorry, David, I concur with that whole aspect. You know, they're a herd animal, and being out in their environment is important to them. And you know, they don't like to be fenced in. They don't like to. They like to have that ability to roam. I know that's not possible generally, but keeping them locked up like that is certainly something that that is important. One of the can influence their energetic. The situation I spoke about in Whitehaven, the lady who owned the horses, she's actually a barefoot trimmer. So she travels around the country and she'll not shoe the horses. So she's working, and it's all to do with this idea of the connection to the earth through the hoof, and taking in energy to nourish the energetic system of the horse. So there's this whole idea around horses at the moment as regards to the shoeing of the horse. And that, of course, the metal involved in that, and the energetic of the metal of the shoe is quite an interesting aspect, certainly to be aware of.
have they thought about using copper instead of steel for the shoes?
That I don't know, David, but that might be something that would be. But I think from the point of view of the lady I've been working with, their whole take on it is taking it back to its natural state or natural environment to the best of its. So if the horse is out in the wild, it ain't going to have a copper shoe on or a steel shoe, if you know what I mean.
Well, if it's in the wild, it doesn't need one. It's only when they start taking them on the road a lot that they really need shoes.
Yeah.
So I had a couple of horses in a different life quite a few years ago, and they had stabling that they could come in and out of, and a couple of acre paddock that they just kind of roamed into.
Yeah.
But the problem with that was in the spring, one of them, the slightest sniff of spring grass and he'd get laminitis. It was, there's a bit of a catch to everything, whichever way you go.
Yeah. The originally horses in the Middle East were shoed in bronze. This is before the Iron Age. And the smiths who made horseshoes are almost viewed as traditionally as magicians or sorcerers. They had a very special situation, and smiths were supposed to be able to put on or lift curses. They had the power to work with iron, and particularly in some Middle European countries and amongst the gypsy community, shoers of horses have a very high status because of this connection with the power of the horse with the power of iron. It's really interesting into that sort of thing.
Say the power of iron, but did you not say that they used bronze originally?
Originally, but as soon as people discovered how to make iron, they shod the horses with iron. But originally,
but that has a different effect. I mean, there's a lot of research being done about not using iron plows or forks or spades because it disrupts the electrical charge of the earth. So
Rudolf Steiner thing about there is a big energetic difference between using iron and bronze tools. I use a bronze spade and I find it very successful.
A bronze what, Mary?
Bronze spade. They're made in Austria by a company called Implementations that make tools for biodynamic gardeners, and they do all sorts of other things for biodynamic gardening as well.
And And what do you find is the biggest difference with that then, using that bronze spade?
Well, I mean, I've not got any scientific data from my own use that you get less problems with mollusks and nematodes if you use bronze implements than if you use other sorts. They're less fatiguing for the gardener.
Right.
I can do a lot more digging with a bronze spade, not only because the design's excellent, it's ergonomically designed and it stays very sharp.
Right.
But I think it's something to do with the material that you don't feel the same amount of fatigue as using iron tools.
That's interesting.
So I'm fairly sure it's to do with it disrupting the electrical charge of the earth. But I'd have to go back into that research somewhere. You'll probably find it on the internet. Just look up bronze spades and forks and it'll probably give you a reason as to why.
I
But
think if you look on biodynamic sorts places, there's an absolute wealth of information. The trouble is we've only got this present lifetime. You could stay up all night reading this stuff and you'd never get through a tenth of it, could you? There's so much.
Well, I did read it 100 years ago, but then I haven't dug the garden since, so I've kind of, forgotten most of it.
Yeah. There are some operations you need a spade for, transplanting and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's burying the dead wives and all that. Yeah. So, yeah.